Hi, Central Florida homeowners. Hey, do you know if you sign a contract to sell your home for, let's say, $500,000, you're not going to get $500,000 at closing? You understand that, right? There are a lot of costs involved, and you may be lucky to take home, let's say, $460,000. Yeah, hi, I'm real estate broker and real estate attorney, David Dowell. There are costs involved with selling a home, and you need to know about these. You see, most realtors just aren't explaining these to their clients. But I think you need to know the facts before you sign a listing agreement or before you accept an offer. You see, a lot of prospective sellers, when they're talking to the realtor about what price am I going to charge, you see, the realtor is thinking in his or her head, what's the market value? But a lot of times the seller is thinking in his or her head, well, how much am I going to have in my hand to put in the bank at closing? Those are two different things. So what you really should be caring about if you're trying to sell your house is how much are you going to receive in your hand at closing? How much is going to your bank account? So I want to give you just like a brief overview of what to expect. Here in the Orlando area, average home prices are anywhere from $500,000 up to $1 million, depending on where you are. So for this example, I'm going to use a round number of, let's say, $500,000 just to be able to describe some of these costs. But you just need to understand this before you enter into your listing agreement, folks. Now, there are what I call 5 different categories. We have commissions, we have title company costs, there are government fees, there are what we call other costs, and I like to throw in the last one, which I call property taxes, which I'll discuss in a minute. Now, first and foremost are commissions. As you know, if you as a seller, if you're going to hire a real estate agent, you're going to expect to pay him or her a commission. Here in Central Florida, that's typically 6%. Now, what that means is your realtor probably gets 3% of that, and the other 3% will go to the realtor of the buyer. And that's just an incentive for the other realtor to bring a buyer in. So right off the bat, 6% on a $500,000 house, that's $30,000 in expenses out of your pocket. In addition, your realtor or his or her real estate company is probably also going to charge what we call transaction fee. Now, those can be anywhere from $250 to $395. It's just an administrative fee that most companies charge just for somebody back in the office to process all the documentation. But it comes out of your pocket. Now, the next category is what I call title costs. That's for the title company or the law firm, whoever's conducting the closing, to do their thing. Now, first and foremost, under title costs is what I call a settlement fee. You see, each side, buyer and seller, is going to be paying this, and it could be anywhere from $250 up to $595. That's the fee for the title company to provide their services. In addition, you as the seller will be paying what we call a title insurance policy premium for the buyer. You see, at closing, the buyer is going to get a title insurance policy, which just basically confirms that title is good to his property. There haven't been any problems in the past, but he's got a valid title. So the seller is going to be paying for that. And the costs are set by state law. And typically for a $500,000 purchase or sale in this case, the seller's going to be paying a title insurance policy of just over $2,500. In addition, the title company is going to charge what we call a search and exam fee. And that fee is what they charge just to basically search the public records, to examine the public records for the property, to determine, if there's any clouds, easements, or other clouds, or any other liens on the property. Now, they're usually going to charge that search and exam fee to the seller. And a typical fee might be anywhere from $150 to $295. Once again, coming out of seller's pocket. But these things add up. There's a few other miscellaneous charges under title, too, that can be such as courier fee. Title companies charging maybe $75, $95 just to send documents back and forth. There could be some kind of document storage fee for $100, $150. There could be some attorney fees involved in it, very small, but that's the gist of it. Now, the next category is what I call government fees. These are fees to record the documents in public records, It's also what we call documentary stamps to pass, documents from one party to another. The state's going to charge these taxes. For recording, those typically are buyer fees, so I'll pass over those. But the big thing under this category is, for the seller, is what we call the documentary stamps or transfer taxes. You see, anytime a seller sells a piece of property, he or she has to pay those transfer taxes, and it's based on the sale price. So if the price on the deed is $500,000, the way it's calculated is that sellers can be paying doc stamps in the amount of about $3,500. That goes straight to the state. It's out of your pocket as a seller. In addition, there might be other fees to be recorded other than the original deed mortgage. You might have liens on your property or easements that have to be resolved. There might be affidavits that have to be filed, satisfaction of liens, and so on, which you as a seller might have to pay for as well. So those add up. Now, the next category is basically, it's just called other. It's miscellaneous fees. There are not a lot of fees here for seller, although there could be some, especially what we call HOA fees. In a new purchase, when the buyer comes in, he or she's got to pay HOA, transfers maybe got to pay a few months ahead of time. So it usually only involves them. But typically on a sale, and you just got to remember this, is that if the seller's up to date on their HOA at the time that the closing or that the contract is entered into, a lot of times the seller will not pay the HOA anymore, knowing that within a few weeks they're going to close and the title is going to be going to buyer. Well, in the meantime, some HOA fees do accrue. And so at closing, we do have to account for all the HOA fees that are due from the time, really, the contract was signed up until the closing date. So that adds some money on that as well. Now, the last category, it's not officially a category, but I like to treat it like this because some people don't refer to it as closing costs, but it is a cost that comes out of your pocket, basically, at closing. It's called property taxes. Here in Florida, as I'm sure you know, property taxes are paid in arrears. So for example, right now, if we're in 2023, we haven't paid our property taxes yet. That bill comes out at the end of the year, and they're due at the end of the year. So when you sell your property, anytime during the year, those taxes from January 1st up until the date of closing are the responsibility of the seller, but they haven't been paid yet. So the way that works is that seller gives the buyer a credit on the settlement statement for the amount of taxes that will be due. You see, at the end of the year, when the tax bill comes out, buyer has to pay that bill in full. But because, let's say we close on August 25th, seller lived in the house from January 1st to August 25th. So that's roughly 75% of the taxes for 2023 are the responsibility of the seller. They're not due yet. You can't pay them yet. So what we do, let's say the tax bill is $8,000. Well, 75% of that is roughly, $6,000. So on the settlement statement, what's going to happen is we're going to give a credit from seller to buyer for $6,000. So that decreases your money in hand that you receive at closing by $6,000. Now, a lot of realtors, what I've noticed, they're trying to give incentives for sellers to sell. And the ones that do give closing costs fail to mention the taxes. Technically, it's not a closing cost, but it affects the amount of money you receive in hand at closing. So you got to know about it. So folks, most of these fees can't be avoided. But you know what? Some can. I know a few legal maneuvers that you can use to avoid some of these. So take advantage of them. Every little bit helps. So if you've got any questions at all about selling costs, or would just like to discuss the benefits of listing your home in this seller's market, feel free to contact me by phone, text, or email, and let's have a quick chat about your situation and how you can save on some of these fees.